All right, Chris, dude, I'm pretty excited to have you on the show. I feel like what's really cool about this podcast is you get to talk to people that kind of are often doing these really cool things. I kind of want to start just because Fargo just happened, dude.
Yeah.
Like, how was Fargo? I'm pretty good friends with Al Fontes, and he always talks about how Fargo has kind of like this hidden gem of talent. And definitely wouldn't mind kind of talking about your experience with coaching the Idaho national team.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Idaho is special, right? It's a small country or small state as far as population and head count go, but there's really some incredibly high level coaches in within the state. And it's a wrestling state too, man. It's a country, blue collar, hardworking place, which kind of breeds wrestlers to begin with, right? And then Chris Owens, which is the former Boise State head assistant coach, he is the developmental coach for the state of Idaho. And then you have coaches like Ivan Ivanov at Soup Place running private clubs as well. So when you get two gentlemen like that are working together and developing youth wrestling, the sky is truly the limit, right? So um, yeah, I wish I had all the numbers in front of me. I could get them too for you, but the amount of college wrestlers that are coming out of the state of Idaho at all three divisions, plus NAIA and plus women's wrestling as well, is remarkable. I want to say it's over 50 wrestlers are going to go wrestle at the next level, coming from a small little tiny state like that. So it's very special what they're doing there. It's taken Coach Owen some time to get everybody on the same page, but now everybody is swimming in the same direction, and the results are speaking for themselves. So last year, the team won Junior Greco. It's the first time the state of Idaho has ever won. Fargo won the national tournament. This year, I think they placed top 15 in two of the four styles. Cadet, junior, freestyle, and Greco being the four. I think they were top 15 in two of them. So it's just very very impressive what they're doing out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be cool. I think, being especially where it's like you look at maybe the history of Idaho, and it's not necessarily considered to be like a Power Five state, but I think it's like when you do look at the coaches that are in the state, and then you look at the level of wrestlers have increased over time. It's like for some of these bigger events, it seems like all the state kind of comes together and trains together, and I think that's pretty unique. I feel like that doesn't happen too often with wrestling, especially in other states.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And we were just talking about this at Fargo actually. So it's special in that sense, or maybe it's possible in that sense, right? So the state of California, where I'm from, where we both live, it would be near impossible to get all of your hammers together training for a proper cycle, in preparation for Fargo, right? Everybody goes up there, everybody trains together before the tournament. And I think they do a great job putting the final touches on before the tournament like that. But the state of Idaho is small enough where everybody can get together for a proper training cycle several months before the tournament. They get together a couple of different times and they're able to peak their athletes appropriately. And then obviously back down the training before the competition, and the results are speaking for themselves, really. But maybe that's not possible in a lot of larger states, maybe those Power Five states that you're talking about there.
Yeah, and I think about this too. You bring a good point with Team California. I think they do have like it's like very short. It's like maybe like a weekend in Fresno, and that's kind of it,
Okay.
And I think for me, it's like we had a couple wrestlers from our high school go and compete at Fargo this last year, and it was kind of hard timing for me because it's like wedding and honeymoon and all that stuff was like going on during Fargo.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for the wrestlers, especially if I'm not going, I want them to feel comfortable with whoever is in their corner. And I
Right.
feel like Team California's got some good coaches. I think for me, it would be awesome, like with Idaho, where it's like you got to spend, a good amount of time leading up to this big event where you actually get to build that trust with people in your corner. And I think that's what again kind of makes it feel like it's more of a team, instead of just kind of a bunch of random people from around the state kind of coming together and working out and competing at the same tournament.
Right, right. Yeah. Everybody's bought into the system by now because of the results, I think, over the last handful of years. But everybody's bought into the system that, okay, for Greco, we're following Coach Ivan Ivanov's system here in preparation of Fargo. For freestyle, we're following Coach Chris Owens's program here. And both of those gentlemen have had such great results for so many years that it's silly to not buy in. But I think that just that belief is so important, right? Because now you're coming together as a team, you're training as a team, and everybody's working the same techniques, speaking the same language. Coaches are coaching. We're able to use the proper verbal commands that the kids are used to hearing during training camps and things like that, right? Whereas in my experience, the state of California has many high level coaches, incredible coaches as well, but everybody coaches a little different. And if each coach is, given the same piece of advice, but using terms that I'm not used to or that my coach didn't use or whatever it was, it's a little bit it's a little bit more challenging, I would say, as an athlete from what I recall. But I'm not here to speak ill on the state of California or any other state by any stretch of the imagination here. But I think that what they have in Idaho right now is very special.
Man, I feel like every time I talk about Idaho wrestling and how it's growing, I'm like, dude, we need a Division I program in Idaho, man. Like that was like one of the most frustrating things, when their program got dropped. I'm trying to think when exactly did you graduate
I
from
graduated in
college?
2017 and they dropped the
Okay,
program in 2016. Yeah.
man, dude, that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's super frustrating when you look at like the amount of talent that's really kind of coming out of Idaho, and they're not gonna be able to really stay home. I think there's North Idaho, there's maybe another like NAI, I believe that's in the state, but there's no like really Division I opportunities that's in the state, and that's unfortunate. That sucks.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And yeah, I don't want to dwell on that whole situation. I think I try to put that behind me, the cancellation of the program. I was already medically retired and a little bit removed from the program at that point. But it was tough. It was really tough. It was poorly done. The university brought up the Bakersfield coaches to take over the program, and then after 1 year, ripped the rug out from underneath their feet. And yeah, it's exactly right. So all of those hammers that are coming out of the gem state there of Idaho have to go somewhere else and compete. And we're talking about high level wrestlers that the state is losing to go, to wrestle for these other programs, right? You have one generation ago it was the Hayden Tumas and the John J. Chavez's, and most recently it's the Ridge Lovett and that group, right? And it's just such a shame. It's so sad that the state is losing those, you know, self-bred or self-developed talents to these other universities. But yeah, it's part of life, I suppose. It's tough.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what's cool about doing these podcasts is it doesn't necessarily go away. It's like something that we talk about, and hopefully at some point this is going to be a conversation that administrators consider when they look at the talent that's coming out of Idaho, and it's like we could have a good wrestling program if we wanted to, and I think that's hard sometimes. I think for certain administrators maybe to wrap their heads around. I did want to kind of talk about your path, so after you're done competing, what was kind of your plan, and what you want to do, I guess. And that's always the toughest thing. It's like, all right, I'm done wrestling. I'm done with school. What now? What were you thinking about doing? And I guess what was your path moving forward?
Yeah, so I also have a lot of aspirations outside of the sport of wrestling too. I love wrestling, but right out of college, I went into investment banking, kind of the typical route for anybody in the finance economics world. Worked a couple of years as a junior banker. Really enjoyed the challenges that investment banking has, like the complexity of the work and the deals that we work on was very interesting for me. I absolutely love that. But if you're familiar with the industry, the hours are grueling, right? It's 5, 6, 7 days a week. It's long hours. It's all day. It's all consuming, really. And actually, I love telling this story. I would turn on my personal email notifications on my computer after my associate would go home. Now he's the last person to leave before the junior people. Um, So it's like maybe 1 or 2 in the morning one day. I'm working on a project, just standard operating procedure as a junior banker. And I get this notification at the bottom of my screen, and it just says Dan Russell for USA Wrestling's US Foundation and Wrestling for Peace travels the world coaching wrestling, making a difference. And I just, I remember like taking a second to just like let that sink in as I'm working on this pitch deck and building this model at 1 in the morning for this business that I hoped we didn't win because it would have been a hard deal to complete anyways. You know, not making a difference. And just, I remember thinking to myself, like, gosh almighty, like, I would like to get a little bit more back involved in wrestling, at least in some capacity, because what this little subject line of this email said here uh, shook me. It shook me down to the bottom of the core of my boots, you know. And so I just remember like taking some time to process that email, and then I reached out to Dan and just saw how I could get involved with Wrestling for Peace. That's his organization, and just I just wanted to dip my toe back in the wrestling world again a little bit.
So you just call them up, or you send them an email and be like, hey man, like I want to help. Like how can I help, or how did that conversation go?
Yeah, totally fair question. Coach Chris Owens and Dan Russell know each other from way back. They're both born, you know, both Idaho gentlemen from back in the day. They had crossed paths in the same wrestling circle, and so I reached out to Coach Owens for a warm intro, and he sent an email to Dan. And Dan immediately got back and said, "Chris, we'd love to have you. You know, let me know what you're thinking." And then things started getting very real for me. This was like maybe like August or September of um, 2020, and I knew I was going to complete the year at my bank because you get paid your bonus at the end of the year. So I knew I had to stick it through. But then Dan was excited about the idea of me coming out there, and so I was thinking to myself like, okay, well, if I complete this year, grab my bonus, I think I need a break. I think it's time for me to wear my wrestling shoes every day, coach wrestling, and then kind of do a little reset and evaluate what I want out of life and what I want for my future here.
So I want to say it was in Jordan, right? Like that's kind of where he was operating at the time, like Jordan,
Yeah.
Egypt, like that area.
Yeah, it's
So
exactly right. Yeah, I didn't speak a lick of Arabic. My Arabic is still horrible, and didn't know anything about the region. And when I spoke to Dan, I asked, I said, "Hey, what would you like from me? You know, where would you like me to be?" Kind of hoping he would say somewhere over here in the western part of the world. I speak a little bit of Spanish, and he said, "You know, I'd like you out here. I think that we could do great things together in Amman, Jordan." We have the support of the U.S. Wrestling Foundation and the Jordanian Wrestling Federation. We have a great partnership out here. So let's team up for this project out here. And I said, okay, crazy, I'm in. Let's do it. You know. And so it actually my departure date from the U.S. kept getting postponed as COVID hit right there. And so every time I would book a flight, I'd get a email back. And I'm not flying Delta. You're not flying Delta to get out there. You're like on Turkish Airlines or something, and you call, and it's like, the person, like, you can hear the baby screaming in the background, and like the person's like, hey, let me put you on hold here while I take my dog out, and like
oh my gosh.
it's like what you're dealing with flying out there is like it's crazy, right? So like this kept getting postponed over and over again, but I finally was able to make it out there. I like had a quarantine period in Turkey for a couple of weeks, and then I was finally able to get to Jordan. But it was a ton of fun. I absolutely love Dan Russell. He's an amazing human being, and how he lives his life and how he incorporates wrestling into what he does is truly remarkable. And it was a wonderful experience coaching out there in Jordan and the surrounding countries and working with him. It was truly amazing.
I feel like for everybody that loves wrestling, being able to coach and like have that be your job and like that's just how you live, like, dude, that's gotta be awesome.
Yeah,
Um, when you
yeah.
go on this trip, I guess when you get there, like, what exactly is the situation in terms of how this foundation is interacting with Jordan Wrestling, and I guess like how did you kind of fit into all that?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I would say that just in general, every program that I've ever done for any country or federation or whatever it may be, every program is different. And Dan was kind of given a like a blank blueprint and was asked to figure it out. How can you develop wrestling for peace here in the Middle East? There's a lot of opportunity within the region. There's a huge love for wrestling, especially the Middle East is comprised of the Sunnis and the Shiite Muslims. Those are the two divisions of the Muslim faith, and especially the Shiites love wrestling. Wrestling is written in the Quran. It's very honorable to have your sons be a part of the wrestling federation there. And so the U.S. Foundation just asked Dan, like, hey, go out here and make this relationship and develop wrestling in the region to the best of your ability, and we support you here. However we can be of assistance, let's do it. So that turned into us working with the national team. That was a ton of fun at the Olympic Committee there, the Medina Real Dia. Let me get my few Arabic sayings out while I can still remember them. And then we developed wrestling at the private clubs as well. We went to rural parts of the country, and we ran wrestling camps and clinics out there, and just tried to grow the love of the sport and the just the love of the sport and just the interest in the sport, really.
When you go to these rural areas, I know, and I definitely want to talk about Costa Rica because that's got to be crazy too. You go to these rural areas, um, like how is the wrestling infrastructure there? Because it's kind. I mean, you can find ways and be creative if you don't have a wrestling mat, or kids don't have wrestling shoes. But when you go there, like I guess what exactly is the situation in some of these rural areas? Like kids have shoes, are they going barefoot? I'm sure you probably got a mix of maybe some people that have wrestled, and then you probably got some kids that maybe just are just trying it out.
Yeah. uh, Bleak. The situation is bleak, I would say for sure. We've run programs where exactly what you're talking about. There's some folks with wrestling shoes, some people, without them, some areas with mats, some areas without mats. We ran a camp. Dan and I ran a camp up in the northeastern part of Jordan, which was refugees from Syria and Iraq coming down into the country of Jordan there. No wrestling mat, no shoes, no street shoes, like just no shoes at all. Like didn't have anything. And we actually brought with us, like on some of these trips, I bring shoes or singlets or whatever it is. For that particular program, we brought uh, water, food, and medicine. That's what they wanted in that region there.
Yeah.
So we're so far removed from like developing wrestling. We're just using wrestling as a means to give these kids something to think about during the day, other than being refugees or other than the hardships that they're currently going through in their life. So it's a wide range of kind of the quote unquote like quality of wrestling that you get. But that's really what the work is all about. These kids, they just want to run, they want to play, they want to learn, they want to do something other than think about the hardships of their lives. And so we didn't have a mat. We just did fun drills, a lot of like gymnastics focused like type warm ups and calisthenics. And then we did some wrestling as they got more and more interested. But we just did it right there on the ground. And 50% of the group had no shoes, just, run around the 100 degrees Fahrenheit temperature dirt with
Gosh.
just their feet, but they freaking love it, they want to get after it. They want to, like, when we're done for the day, they're like, no, 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 like we don't want to go, sit around again. Like, let's keep going, let's keep training. And so that's how we know as coaches that we're on the right path, right? Like, it's a little hostile when two Americans show up in the, some corner of Jordan that where they've never seen white people before. But we go out there, we have fun with them, we get them, sweating and smiling and laughing and having a good time. And then when they don't let us leave at the end, we know that we're using wrestling. We're using wrestling the right way.
It's almost I'm trying to think of a good comparison, but you guys are like, spreading the word of wrestling,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think that's kind of what really at any level, like that's what we want to do is we want to grow people's love for the sport. And I think especially with the situation that's in the Middle East, I think that's for a lot of just the kids is like, what can we do, maybe to not necessarily focus on, what has happened to our homes and our communities. Like, it's like especially these kids that maybe don't have a lot of power in their situation. And it kind of gives them hope,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably one of the most important things someone that's a young person can have is that hope.
Yeah, 100% agreed. That's spot on, Brian. I think at the end of the day, wrestling provides opportunity for all of us, and across all age levels, talent levels, whatever it may be. And so you have to maybe calibrate a little differently when you're talking about that group that I just described there versus the opportunities that our Olympians are going to get when they return home with their medals or whatever. But at the end of the day, that's the beautiful thing about our sport is that it provides opportunity irrespective of uh, gender, race, religion, culture, whatever. It doesn't matter. You learn that relationship between hard work and success. The harder you work, the more that you get in life. It doesn't matter where you come from or who you pray to or what you believe in. That's going to help put you on a better path for sure.
So dude, this trip, it sounds like it completely kind of changed your outlook on life. And it had to have been maybe pretty encouraging for, I guess, like what you wanted to do moving forward. How long were you there in that first trip?
I was in Jordan for 11 months, almost a
Dude,
year. Mhm.
that's awesome. So you're
Still don't
there
know
for
any
11.
Arabic though, or very much Arabic, I would say.
Yeah. So my brother was in Iraq and Afghanistan,
Wow.
and he said, it's like you learn some phrases, but like
Yeah.
it's hard because it's kind of like, I mean, you say you speak a little Spanish. It's like, yeah, I took Spanish in high school, and then I remember actually talking to people that were from Mexico and spoke like fluent Spanish, and there's different dialects, and it's like, okay, you're gonna have to slow down. Like I can't even like identify some of their words just because they're talking so fast and so comfortably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got to be a tough language to learn too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you come back to the United States. I mean, so I know you kind of stopped your investment banking job. I guess what was kind of going through your mind? Because I know we talked before, like you're like, man, I kind of want to do my own thing here out here in the the North and South America, but logistically, like job, like where are you going to live, like all that other stuff. I guess what was kind of going through your mind when you came back?
Yeah, so even when I was in Jordan, I was working on a trading strategy, like my partners and I are going to launch a hedge fund here before the
Nice.
end of the year. Thank you. So I've been building the strategy now for a couple of years. I had this idea when I was a banker, and I've been working on this in the background. But this also allowed me to, now that I'm launching my own fund here, this allows me the flexibility to also be involved with my nonprofit, which is Wrestling for More. And so when I came home, I decided like I have to be involved with this kind of wrestling work in a larger capacity. Like I might not be able to live in a foreign country for a year and develop my professional career the way I want to, but I can't just let this work, you know, go to the side or anything like that. I have to be involved in this in some capacity. So I came home. And then I actually came home because I was coaching with the RTC at Stanford, and then I was building my business, trying to study for the entrance exam for a business school, and then launching Wrestling for More. The three of those things. I ended up not going to business school, and then just launching. I'll be launching my fund here by the end of 2024, and then I've begun doing small projects for Wrestling for More. And I just feel like on a personal level, this is the right balance for myself with my kind of professional and finance development, and then my love and my passion for wrestling.
It cut you off. So you're talking about how you were working out of RTC, you decided to not go back to business school, and yeah, you have your next fund that's coming out later this year, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I really wanted to go to Stanford Business School. I didn't get in. The universities I got into, I was just kind of lukewarm on attending those. And so I just was at a good place with what I need in my own life as far as my professional development and finance, and then my kind of passion project here with wrestling. I was at a perfect spot where I was able to go and I can go and spend a month in Costa Rica because I yeah, my partners and I have allowed for this with respect to my fund. Um, and I could also, on the other hand, on the other side of things, I can also continue to build my fund and my professional development, which is really important to me as well.
Yeah. So when you come back, you're working on this fund. Um, I guess how do you kind of figure out which country you're going to go to, and how do you kind of build that relationship? I guess with the wrestling that's existing there already.
Yeah. So at this stage, after being in Jordan for a year with the U.S. Wrestling Foundation, USA Wrestling Foundation, my name is just kind of in some international circles a little bit, and I'm really in some like amazingly cool group chats with different federations and different members of UWW and whatever else it may be. There are some other gentlemen that do similar work to myself and Dan that work for UWW. And I just get some incredible opportunities. I see some incredible opportunities. I'm on some cool threads. And so at this stage, it's more a matter of like folks reaching out to me. And then when I get an inbound request, then my team and I at Wrestling for More, we evaluate and kind of assess the need and the federation, or sometimes it's a subset of the federation, right? Like an associated style, not an Olympic style. We understand like, okay, this is what they're looking for. This is the time frame. Like, what do they need? Do they need a 2 week long clinic? Do they need a 2 month long overhaul? What's the situation? We assess like the finances. Like, is the wrestling federation going to help pay for some of this? Are we going to need to raise more money on our end of things? And then most importantly, does this align with our mission, vision, and values at Wrestling for More? Is this something that obviously the donors donate to us with our very explicit mission, vision, and values? And does this program match up with what we stand for?
So when you start looking at, okay, we're going to go to this country, and you start that process of trying to figure out, what exactly are the costs going to be? What exactly does this country need that we can provide? I guess the hard part, because I mean, I do fundraising all the time with my high school program and in our youth club. Dude, it can be hard, and it seems like a lot of it comes down to there's sometimes you could have a lot of people involved, like in terms of the size of your program, but it's like 5 to 10 people maybe that are really doing like a lot of the legwork, and that takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of phone calls. I guess when it comes to this fundraising process for those costs that maybe aren't being provided, from an outside, how I guess how do you go about trying to work this fundraising and be able to come up with the cost basically for this trip?
Yeah, that is the biggest struggle of my nonprofit. As I mentioned, this is not my full-time role, so I can only, in good faith, devote so many hours per week to my wrestling project here, right? Like I need to be focused on my main fund. But with respect to fundraising, I have one specific donor who really will fly me just about anywhere in the world. So that's a huge first step in all of these projects. He's been absolutely amazing. Every time I reach out, he's ready to go. Um, and then it really boils down to, can we get enough money to cover the small costs, right? I oftentimes ask the local federation for housing, because I don't mind staying with, sometimes they can provide me a bed at the Olympic Training Center, or I can stay with one of the coaches or whatever it may be. I don't need crazy accommodations. And I also like that the federation is a little bit invested, right? If they're getting a product for free, they're just less inclined to appreciate what they're getting.
Yeah,
And the folks that we're working with don't have a lot of money, and I
yeah.
and I know that intentionally. So it's like, how do I get them in at least a little bit invested in what we're doing? So I often ask them to pick up housing, and then really it's just a matter of fundraising for food and then my cost when I go out there for the period of time.
So
And
you were, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and I have a team of maybe 4 or 5 different gentlemen that are in college that I've coached over the years, that help with the fundraising, and they will call on friends and family and businesses and whatever it may be, and I cut them a portion of whatever they raise, and then they call as much or as little as they'd like, depending on how much time they have. And we try to make it very low pressure, low stress for these fundraising folks because, as you alluded to, fundraising it sucks. It's a pain. It's expansive. It's challenging, really, So we try to make it as tedious as least tedious as possible.
So you go on this trip to Costa Rica. I guess what is your accommodation like when you get there, and how do you kind of figure out, I guess, what is the best way to move forward for this time that you have while you're there, in order to kind of help develop wrestling there?
Yeah, that's really two separate questions. So for the accommodations, while I was there, I stayed in Coronado, which is just a little bit east of San Jose, the capital of the country. And that's where their Olympic Training Center is. So they at their Olympic Training Center, they have like eight dorm rooms, and each dorm has two bunk beds with two beds each. So they have plenty of space for people to come and stay and either train as an athlete or coach there as well. So Costa Rica took great care of me. They have a weight room there. They have laundry. They have a very good facility and good setup there. And then when I was on the road coaching at the private clubs, they either set me up in a hotel or I stayed with somebody that was local while I was in that particular region of the country. And really they went above and beyond for me there. So it was amazing. Um, but then the second part of your question, like how we get organized before we go down there, that's that's probably the largest part of each program that I run. The actual event of going down there and hosting the coaches clinics or showing technique on the mat, that's easy, it's fun, it's pretty straightforward. But figuring out what the federation or what the program needs is really the trickiest part because the truth is that the federations, when they reach out to me, they don't know where their deficiencies are. Otherwise, they would solve them themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of time of being on the phone, doing video calls, watching videos of their highest level wrestlers, understanding the system that they currently have in place, and then what changes can we implement on their current system such that we can bring them to the next level.
So what were some of the things that you saw, and just through conversations, when you were in Costa Rica, like how were you able to kind of go in and help them make some changes to what they already had going on?
Yeah, so their situation what is like this. So the beautiful geography of Costa Rica that we see in all of the pictures and postcards and everything, it's amazing. But it's also the other end of that is that it's also very limiting in the sense that the country as a whole is small, right? It's like I think it's like 20,000 square miles. But it's challenging to get from region to region because of that beautiful climate and those beautiful mountains, and especially during the rainy season and things like that, where
Yeah.
as the crow flies, the clubs are not very far away, but to get there, you're doing these switchbacks up the side of these mountains and these cliffs, right, and these one lane highways, and it's very challenging. So um, for us, for Costa Rica, what we did is we just took the coaches from each high level club and we brought them together so that they could learn from each other and start to develop a relationship, but amongst each other. And then when they did that, they slowly, like over time, have begun putting together camps and clinics where they can't do it every day, but hey, once a month we're going to get together at so and so's club, and we're going to bring all of our hammers together and have these kind of best on best practices,
Yeah.
right? And we are just talking about this. That's what you need, and that's what the state of Idaho is doing a good job of doing. Iron sharpens iron, right? I'm a huge believer in that, and you need your best guys banging together as frequently as possible, and just the understanding that, hey, listen, your club, your little private club here, you're doing a great job. Everybody is excelling at a very great clip here, but if you bring your best guys to this club and wrestle with these best guys together, you guys are going to grow at an even faster clip. And so just getting the coaches to believe in that, we all have a little bit of pride in like, hey, this is my club and this is, we believe in my system here, but just getting the coaches to let their guard down a little bit, being kind of that neutral third party to come in and say, hey, listen, these guys down here in the South, they're doing a really good job here in parterre. But let them come up here and work with you guys and learn from you guys in the North on their feet, and then let them have a day or two where they show parterre, because I think you guys can improve in your parterre up here in the North. And no hard feelings. There's no animosity towards anybody. Let's all get together and train, and just kind of being a neutral person that comes in there and can work with everybody, and I can show my techniques as well, and then let everybody begin to kind of mingle together. That was the biggest thing I think for Costa Rica, which was cool. It was really really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have experience, I guess, like what you mentioned, with what's kind of been happening with Idaho, and what gets challenging. And this is kind of what I've talked about before on this podcast, but when I personally have had to kind of deal with is that you have, your club coaches and you have your high school coaches, and sometimes there's that ego and that challenge of working together. And I think it's like that. What is this ultimately about? It's about helping our athletes reach their goals, right? And I
Mhm.
think there's certain people in our sport, where they've just been doing it for a long time, and they have this particular way of doing things, and it's just like human nature. It's uncomfortable to change, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it takes setbacks. Sometimes it takes an outsider to say, "Hey, why don't we try to bridge this gap here?" And that's kind of where you really start gaining a lot of ground, because again, it's like, let's put my ego aside, and let's think about how can we best help our athletes reach their goals, and continue to build that love for the sport within our country. And I think that's awesome you had a chance to go and do that. um yeah, man, I think what are some of the, I guess, is some of it the fact that geographically they're kind of put in these little pockets, and they don't necessarily have a lot of interaction with each other unless it's like a competition, or unless it's like something like that. Like, I guess, how did that divide? Is it mainly just geographical, in terms of why in the past they haven't been able to really interact like that?
Yeah, geography is a big one. Funding is also obviously a big factor in all these kind of smaller countries like this. But also, I would say those two things can be mitigated if the joint practice or the joint event is such that it really truly improves the athletes in their development, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't want to drive 3 hours to practice, up the side of this mountain, or whatever it may be, and then you gotta, maybe you gotta sleep in your car because you don't want to pay for a hotel or something like that. Or sometimes they were, sleeping in the wrestling room because it's, one central place where everybody can sleep. Um, and you're less likely to do those things unless you're really seeing results from your training.
yeah,
And then I think all of us in the wrestling world, we put everything else aside if we're seeing results, right? Like, it doesn't matter how far you need to drive to practice. It doesn't matter what you're going through. We as wrestlers are willing to endure a lot of uncomfortable things if we're improving in our sport. And so my job was to put together a program at these different clubs and bring these people together such that they were seeing real results, and they're seeing something, and they realized, I have to get up here and train with these guys once every 6 weeks. I have to. It's just it's a disservice to me and my club if I'm not doing it right. And so that's really how I can change the tide in a 1 month time frame. Because obviously once I leave, I can't show my personal technique anymore. They can video my technique, and they can, when they get together, they can train my stuff. But really, it's bringing everybody together and creating a little system like in the state of Idaho.
do you continue to interact with some of these coaches and some of these athletes that were in Costa Rica when you were there?
Yeah, absolutely. We
Yeah.
share, we're on WhatsApp chats together, or, we follow each other on Instagram and stuff, and we reach out, hey, what'd you think about so and so in the semifinals here, whatever it may be. I just yesterday heard from one of my Jordanian wrestlers that I haven't spoken to in a couple, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 months now, and he just reached out and wanted to chat through some of the matches in the Olympics. Just he's excited, he's curious, and so um and for me, a lot of what I take away from these kind of events and these programs is those lasting relationships.
Yeah.
To me, it's so beautiful. It's so much fun, and I love hearing from him. And you know, this particular Jordanian wrestler, now he's in college now, and he wrestles with their club program. And he was lucky enough he has the financial means to go to college, but I don't think that he maybe was necessarily going to go away to school to a different country to go to school. But he wanted to be a part of this little their club program at this college, and he loves it, and that's special to me. That then I know that I'm making a difference. It doesn't matter. I have no idea what his record is, and that doesn't matter, right? Like for him, it's about continuing his love for the sport, and then that maps over to the other, facets of his life, really.
Yeah, the fact that he wants to keep doing it, and hopefully it's one of those things where, when he gets to be in a position to where he can help someone else or he can help coach, that he's able to do that, and I think that's what's so special about this network, that we all are kind of in now, is kind of one of those things where it's like, dude, somebody help me out,
Yeah,
so that's like a big reason why I'm coaching,
yeah,
and that's something that I try to instill with our athletes. Like at some point, you're going to be called to serve in some capacity, and whether that's, you are putting your time in as a coach. Maybe that is, you're trying to help somebody that, wrestled for us or is going to coach with us or whatever, try to help them out with a job. And whatever that might be, all this stuff is really what kind of makes this sport special.
yeah.
And it's super
Very
cool,
cool.
man. I think this sounds like a really cool experience. And I guess like while you're there, are you just like stepping away completely from your fun that you're working on and just your day job, or are you like trying to, like when you're at home trying to find Wi-Fi or like trying to do all that stuff, or are you just like, now I'm taking a break for a month and then I'll come back and I'll work on that project?
Uh, good question. It's somewhere in the middle, to be
Yeah.
honest. Uh, I run the fund. I'm the founder of the fund, so there are some things that I just have to be involved in, some discussions and some meetings. But I also found during this Costa Rica time, that a good hard reset like that, where I unplug for a couple of weeks, is really advantageous for my business. I came back with just a clear mind, and the ability to think through our current situations better, and with a different perspective. And just I got out of the hamster wheel of, like, you go to work every day and you check the same boxes and you do the same things, right? And I just came back with just a clear, a good reset. And I felt that that was actually super, super helpful for the business. And in the particular case of Costa Rica, we were kind of stuck on this issue for a couple of months while leading up to Costa Rica and while I was in Costa Rica. And then when I came home, it was such that I thought about things a little bit differently, and we solved this, like, kind of, honestly, this larger problem that we were running into. And so I have taken that and really kind of internalized that particular situation and realized that, like, hey, sometimes I do need to just get a good reset for myself, and this is going to help me, across the board in my life here.
One thing I did want to ask you is, I guess moving forward, like how do you kind of, you said you're in this group chat and you're kind of in these different threads and you're interacting with all these people that are involved with UWW or different clubs or different foundations. How do you kind of figure out where you're maybe need to go next?
Yeah, it really depends on what the need is of the country, and then how closely that maps to our mission, vision, values.
Hmm.
If it's just like, I'm just going to make up some examples here, but say it's some first world country. They just want me to go out there and show some technique, and they want to wine and dine me. And if it's closer to a vacation, that's not of interest to me. Like, if I need a vacation, I need to take that outside of, wrestling for more, right? If it's a matter of like some developing country, hey, Chris, this has been our progress the last several years. We're at X, but we need to climb to Y, or we want to climb to Y. We recently have this newfound interest from these coaches. We want to bring new coaches on board. but we're really, we're missing that kind of key person to come in and grow our development. That really aligns with our mission, vision, values. Um, so I would say that one event that we're considering right now, or one program that we're considering right now, is that the traditional style of wrestling in India, which is called Kushti, they
Mhm.
recently were qualified by United World Wrestling to be an associated style of wrestling. And so, like, obviously, freestyle and Greco are the two Olympic styles, the actual styles of UWW. And then UWW also associates traditional style wrestling and other subsets of wrestling like that. And so these guys want to do a launch of their product or a launch of their style of wrestling. They don't have a lot of money. They don't get funding from the Olympic Committee, from like the Olympic Styles does. So this is like a perfect opportunity for us to grow this style of wrestling and get them some recognition. So to me, that closely aligns with what we are interested in doing in Wrestling for More, which is using the sport of wrestling. Our mission is to use the sport of wrestling to grow and develop people and help people, right? So this is something that we're really strongly considering right now. We're speaking to our sponsors. We're trying to understand if this will be a program that we can put together that works for us.
What's the name of the style?
Kushti,
Kushti.
Kushti. Yeah. Mhm.
Do you, how, what are the differences with Kushti and some of the other wrestling styles?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's similar scoring to, I would say, like a freestyle. But the arena is like, it's not on a mat like what we would consider to be a, Olympic or a folk style mat. It's on a similar shape, but it's in mud. It's mud wrestling. And so it's
Nice.
done in the most rural parts of the country. Their claim is that it was done before any Olympic style was ever associated, because it's, before there were mats or before there were, whatever else it may be. So this is something that's very important to the traditional people of India in some
Mhm.
of the toughest corners of the country. And these are the kind of people that we like to be working with, and that we find this fits Wrestling for More's mission.
I gotta watch some. Maybe there's got to be some videos of them wrestling on YouTube. I gotta be able to check that out.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of beach wrestling,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
feel like what's cool about that. It sounds like the same thing with it's Kushti, right?
Yep.
That's the name of the style. You can kind of do it anywhere, you
Right,
know.
right.
If it's like you want to beach wrestle, go to the beach. If you are maybe in a position where you don't have wrestling mats,
Yeah.
right? It's like, dude, you can do Kushti. Just, get some water in your backyard and, fire it up and go for it. And I think that's something that I think, for me, when I look at that, I think that's awesome that they're trying to add more wrestling, because what that means is now people that maybe don't have access to some of that wrestling infrastructure, maybe this is that new sport that it's easier for them to get involved in than maybe having to go out and get a mat, get wrestling shoes, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's absolutely true. And almost the reverse of that is true too, where these people have been wrestling.
Mhm.
They have been doing this sport since the beginning of time. They just don't have any like, they don't receive any of the recognition, but this is going on,
Yeah.
and we have the chance at Wrestling for More to highlight this traditional style and give these athletes some of the respect that I think they deserve, because they don't get, maybe they don't have enough money to commute to the Olympic Training Center to train the Olympic styles. Maybe they live too far away, but these guys love wrestling just like you and I love wrestling. But their style of wrestling hasn't been considered official all this time. But now we can shine a spotlight on these guys and help them, grow a little bit, grow the respect that they deserve.
And right now, it's you guys are considering it, or is it something that we're probably going to do this? We're trying to figure out exactly maybe some of the details.
Yeah, without tipping my cap here too much.
All right, fair
Yeah,
enough. At some
I
point, we can stop recording and we can do behind the scenes.
no, I hate to say that I'm gonna go do this and then it doesn't go through, but I will
Yeah.
share that. Um, yeah, they have given me the official invitation. We received it via email from the Kush Tea Federation. I have sent back our official acceptance letter, which is, this is an event, and this might seem silly or foreign, but in a lot of countries, this is like this is exactly how things start. In the
Yeah.
US, like if you and I wanted to get together and host a foreign country, we could just do it. Like, you agree to it, I agree to it, we just bring them out. But in a lot of countries, they need, in order for their visas and for just their federation and their parents or whatever it may be, these kind of like official letterheads and things like that are part of the tradition and part of the culture to do. So we have received ours, sent ours back. Um, I have cleared it with my sponsor. He's willing to fund my flight here for this one. That's my big one. But this is all new. This is within the last 2-3 weeks that we've gotten all these details ironed out.
Awesome.
So yeah, next is housing and maybe some of my college guys will have to call on some donors for me, or sometimes they set up camps that I go and do to help fund my trips as well. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. I'm really excited about it. It would be in January if we're able to get everything together.
Okay. So, dude, I'm trying to do quick math in my head. That's like 4 or 5 months, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of planning.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, man, I guess, you talked about like you and your team, they'll maybe do some camps that are, I'm sure in California, are like relatively, without having to spend too much money, on traveling these areas. It's like probably a drive. And then you're probably doing phone calls and emails and things like that. Um, do you feel like, I don't know, is there a lot of pressure on like we have to do it in this time frame? And how do you maybe communicate that, or how do you handle that stress or that pressure, that maybe comes under kind of being on that time frame to come up with those funds?
Yeah, that's well said. That's exactly right. It's a catch-22 here, right? Because it's hard to fundraise in advance without an event, like on the horizon, right? Because people are less inclined to donate if they don't know exactly where their money is going, right?
Hmm.
If it's just like a blank check to Wrestling for More, like it if we go to India here, I'm going to, somebody that might donate for Costa Rica might not donate for India, for example. They just, they want their money going to other places, right? But once I get something on the books and it's like, yeah, we're going to do this event at this time, you're exactly right. Now we're on the clock. We need to raise a certain amount of money in order to be able to make this happen, right? So it's a challenge for sure, but I suppose it's part of the fun in it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, so I guess, I'm trying to think of, I guess like how to move forward with this conversation. I guess like when you go to India, do you feel like you have to kind of have obviously a good understanding of the rules? Are there certain cultural things that you have to be aware of when you are interacting with wrestling, when you're interacting with people while you're there? And I guess how much, how much, I feel like that's a whole nother line of preparation that you also kind of have to do in order to get ready to go on this trip.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So before I go on one of these trips, I do try to learn a little bit about culture, kind of what I'm getting myself into. But to be totally fair, I could spend a lifetime preparing for
Yeah.
these events and still, not have the slightest inclination to know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of like this is maybe like bit tangentially related, but it's like there's a lot of like learning that I do as a person. When I go to a country, I don't speak the language, I don't know my way around, just how to act and how to be kind and respectful and things like that that maybe we as Americans don't necessarily learn from a young age because everything here in English, everything in the US is written in English. It's like if you don't speak English here, I feel like it's a negative. Like people look at you like, what the heck is going on? But in other parts of the world, it's not uncommon for, many folks to struggle with the language. There's a lot of travelers and whatever it may be. And even like you mentioned, even within the language of Spanish, different dialects are such that it's challenging to even know what's being said in Dominican Republic Spanish compared to Argentinian Spanish. Those two dialects of Spanish are way different, right? So when I travel, people are really understanding that, hey, this is a foreigner. We need to help this guy out, whatever it may be. But I do think that I personally am received better the more educating that I do before I leave. If I can learn a little bit of the language, that's a huge plus. If I know kind of small things about the culture, like when to say a particular phrase, or when to do a toast at dinner or whatever it may be, this
Yeah.
goes a long way for these local folks in showing that I care enough to try to learn about them. And if I just can show that I care, then they're willing to, lift heaven and earth to help me out there. It's truly beautiful.
Dude, this is it's gonna be a cool trip, man, and
So,
I'm
thank you.
I'm excited for you, and I'm very glad to have had you on, and I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. Before we end the show, do you got anything else that you just kind of want to add or want to talk about?
No, I think that this has been great, and Brian, thank you for having me here. I did mention that fundraising is the largest challenge of our division. So if any of your listeners here want to be involved and want to help, we have a small team of folks that I mentioned, a couple of my college wrestlers. And if anybody wants to get involved with kind of the administrative side of fundraising, and if they can help us be an extra pair of hands in the fundraising division, that's what makes these events happen, right? Like at the end of the day, we do need a little bit of money to operate. And if anybody's willing and able to help with that, that would be, massively helpful for us.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chris, appreciate you, man. I'm gonna end.